Thank you guys for joining us today. So we're here to talk about a pretty fun topic. We're going to talk about influencer marketing.
That's right.
This week, I believe, it was this week, I think, Women's Wear Daily came out with a report that 4 out of 5 of Nordstrom.com's mobile referral traffic was driven by influencers from your RewardStyle network. RewardStyle is basically at the center point of this kind of influencer and brand collaboration, I would say. So the startup helps influencers and brands basically get paid for driving sales based on their posts. You started this company in 2011. A lot has changed. The company has grown. You're projecting to have to drive $1 billion in sales this year. Tell me about that. What has been kind of the biggest challenge in building this company that is no longer kind of a scrappy startup?
Sure. Well, first, can everybody hear me? Doesn't sound like my mic's working.
Oh.
Is it on?
I think it...
Did it drop?
Yeah.
Oh no, it dropped.
Oh, there it is.
Okay, 1 second. Okay.
We're good.
Guys hear me? Kind of. Okay, I'll just talk loud. Yeah, we can hear you. All right, so first of all, I want to thank Mike and the Button team for having me. It's been a pretty crazy year for RewardStyle. Like you said, this year we expect our influencers are expected to drive more than $1 billion in retail sales this year. And like you said, Women's Wear Daily, with help of SimilarWeb, announced that we're 80% of the mobile referral traffic to one of the biggest retailers in the US and in the world. And so when I look back at when we started the company, I started the company with my girlfriend at the time, now wife. Glad it worked. Could have gone two ways. When we started the company, it was really to help her quit her job, which was she worked at a retail store. Help her quit her job and do what she loves. So she was a fashion blogger. Influencer wasn't a word back then. This is 2010, 11 when we started thinking about RewardStyle. And it was really simple. We wanted to connect her with brands that are willing to pay her for the sales that she was driving. And so when we started the company, it was just her and I calling on a handful of retailers. I think we had 3 retailers at the beginning in 2011 and a couple fashion bloggers. Again, that was before social really emerged in terms of, if you think about all the players today, Instagram, Pinterest, Snapchat, really that was before that time. And then we just started recruiting our friends, basically her friends that are fashion bloggers. We one by one recruited to where we are today, which is we have 4,000 retailers. We have I think it's about 17,000 influencers in over 85 countries, like I said, that will drive $1 billion in sales. When I look back, I think the most challenging thing was early days, us recruiting brands, convincing them that these fashion bloggers were really the next sales team for them, right? And in a lot of ways, that's what the influencers become. The challenges we ran into were that wasn't really part of their marketing vernacular. They didn't really know where to put us when it came to marketing spend. Also, when you think about growing the team of 2, it was just her and I, to a team of 250 across 7 offices, 4 of which are international, there's a lot of operational challenges that go with that. So how to attract team members that really understand hypergrowth, that understand the vision that we were executing against. And long-winded answer, operational challenges really were difficult, and really convincing that the marketer that influencers are really going to drive the amount of sales that they are today.
Yeah, I think it's important to note too, you guys are based in Dallas. So you've been doing all this from Dallas. How has that been a challenge, or has it been a challenge for you to not be in Silicon Valley, to not be in New York, where which is kind of the center of fashion? Sure.
So in Dallas, being headquartered in Dallas, I think helped a lot. It really shielded us from, I would say, we were sort of the anti-Silicon Valley in Dallas. We don't know if we're going to be able to raise money, and so we really thought methodically about how we were going to grow our business. We bootstrapped the company to well over 100 employees without raising any money. 4 years of bootstrapping, and in a lot of ways, we were insulated from a lot of the conversations that were happening, and so we were able to really focus on our vision. And our vision, to be very clear, is to make monetizing the entirety of influence as easy as turning a key. And so it allowed us to basically focus there and not get caught up in a lot of the trends that were happening in Silicon Valley, particularly around financing and strategic vision.
So this whole world of influencers is pretty nascent. Like you said, they weren't even called influencers when you first started the company.
Right.
How has the landscape evolved, and how have you had to evolve with it? I mean, these influencers are now on tons of different social platforms, Instagram being a primary one, but that's relatively new.
Sure, so a lot has changed, like you said, since we started. Really 4 main trends have happened over the last, say, 6 years. The first is, we talked about the rise of the influencer. That's very clear. They'll drive $1 billion through our channel this year. And that's really because it's really cheap and efficient to create content now. You have your cameras in your handset. Our influencers can get their boyfriend or girlfriend to come over and take a picture. Very easy and cheap to create content. The second is it's easy for them to grow audience. So these social platforms allow for audience growth very quickly. And the last piece is there's an incentive to get up in the morning and create content, and that's because they can get paid to do it, which RewardStyle facilitates. The second is the evolution of content consumption. 5 hours a day, general users are on their mobile device. And 90% of that time, 90% of that time is in social, right? And then if you look at the social channels, they're becoming more and more closed in nature, meaning there's limitations to, say, our influencers or a general consumer to direct their audience to a third-party website like a brand site. And then also another thing that's interesting that's happening, a third trend that we're seeing, are that consumer expectations are changing. With the kind of on-demand era that we're in, whether it's transportation, food delivery, it's personal care, now fashion, their needs and wants, they want them to be satisfied immediately. And then lastly, brands, when you think about the fourth trend, brands are looking to rationalize their spend. And so when we talk to marketers, more than ever, they tell us that there's a lot of pressure for them to deliver ROI. And our data corroborates that information. And so when you look at those trends, our influencers in 2014 started to create a lot more content within these closed mobile social channels, Instagram being the primary one, and they were unable to extend their businesses into Instagram. So we launched LikeToKnow.it, which is our only consumer product. And it's very simple. It was launched as an email service that allowed a consumer to register once.
Can you go back and
Sure.
say why were they unable to expand their businesses on Instagram?
Because of the closed nature of Instagram, where they couldn't, say, take a picture of their outfit or a destination and link to the vendor, the retailer, where they could actually act on that inspiration. Because they are unable to do that, we were actually unable to track sales that they were driving to the retailer. And so because of that, we knew that we needed to find a solution to that, and LikeToKnow.it was, our first version was a solution for specifically Instagram. The consumer, again, in the first version, would sign up with their email and Instagram account. Anytime they liked any content within Instagram, we had their email address, and we could pull down all of their Instagram content that they liked, and we would deliver them an email and ready-to-shop product links so that they could purchase anything in that content. And then today, so if you look at March of this year, we've had a vision for LikeToKnow.it that's broader than just Instagram, and it's to allow consumers to curate content wherever they're discovering it, and to shop when they're ready. And so, kind of looking to the horizon of where we think things are going, we evolved our solution in March, launching the first consumer app for LikeToKnow.it that allows consumers to shop their screenshots. And I'd love to show a video of how that works. So what you were seeing there was a consumer on Instagram or that specifically is Instagram, it could be Snapchat, it could be on Pinterest, anywhere, sees influencer content, screenshots that content immediately. We hit them with a notification where then they can purchase immediately whatever's featured. Since we launched in March, there have been 8 million screenshots that have been successfully matched. And this year alone, LikeToKnow.it will drive 300 million in retail sales to our retail partners. And then next year, if you look at, so this year we'll drive $1 billion in retail sales. The really exciting thing for us is, and for the consumer, influencer, and the brand, is that next year, by the end of next year, LikeToKnow.it will be the lion's share of the sales that we're driving to retailers. So I think that shows how important social is for retail, for influencers, and it really it's because it's solving the problem the consumer has on acting on inspiration that they're seeing around content.
With these influencers, are they? I'm blanking on my question.
No, you're fine.
So okay.
I can keep talking.
No.
I do that well.
No, but these influencers, how did you know, like what were the early signs that these influencers that it was going to translate into money for retailers, that it wasn't just liking, that it was going to actually translate into sales? Like how did you know when you started with a handful of people?
So when we started, one of our good friends, an influencer based here in New York, we finally, after some convincing, we said, look, use our products. We have, I think it was maybe ShopOp, Net-a-Porter, Amazon ShopOp, one of our early retail partners, where we said, look, use our product. We know that you're driving sales to these specific brands, and we want to prove to you and to the brand that you can really be successful for them going forward. And I think in the first day, this one specific influencer created one piece of content and it drove, I forgot how much in sales, but she sold something like 150 dresses in 5 hours. Mm-hmm. And so we knew that there was something there. And just over time, we've been able to prove successfully that this is really the new Salesforce. And if you just look at the sales numbers, I think it tells that story.
So not everybody can be an influencer. It's a closed community. Can you tell me a little bit about why and what that vetting process is like and why that's important to the business?
Yeah, so I think it's important to start with on the brand side. I think a lot of the speakers today were talking about how understanding where their dollar is being spent and understanding that performance is important. But equally as important is who's basically telling their story. In a lot of ways, our influencers are telling that brand story. And sometimes, I would argue, sometimes in a better way than the brand can even tell themselves, and at least in a more authentic way. There are 26 million influencers in the world. The problem brands have is who do you reach out to, and how do you harness these influencers at scale? Right. Who do you know to work with? And for us, we've always thought that we want to work with influencers that are high quality, on brand for the brands, for our retail partners. And so we have a very rigorous qualification sort of that we run our influencers through. It's both qualitative and quantitative, and it's really kind of part of our secret sauce. It's looking at the 6 years of historical performance data that we have across all channels, social and otherwise, and looking at those predictors of success and saying, look, these influencers we expect are going to be the next rising star. We're going to invest in them, and that's how we do it.
Can you break that down a little more? So is it dependent on the number of followers
Sure.
somebody has, or the number of how many people are actually commenting on posts? Like, what are some of the factors?
So there's a bit of a misunderstanding. There's not a great correlation between follower count and the ability to drive sales, which I think is surprising. So for us, we don't look for reach. I mean, it's a component sometimes. But for us, we have these interesting data points to tell us who, here's a good example. We actually declined one of our top influencers twice.
Wow.
And we kept coaching her on how to improve. And then she came back and she ended up being our top influencer.
What was she doing wrong?
So some of it was around how she was creating the content. Some of it was quality. Some of it was strategy. Some of it was consistency around how she was engaging her audience. I know I'm being a bit vague, but it's because it's our secret sauce. And so, but we learn. We don't get it right every time. But I think what's important is for brands, they really care about who's talking about them, and they're willing to pay influencers and a lot of times well, right? If they're on message, on brand, if they have a small but extremely engaged audience, and we're really good about finding the random influencer in the middle of nowhere that no one would expect would have an engaged micro community, rolling those up and allowing basically our brands to harness that roll up of influencers at scale.
Do brands ever say, I don't want to work with that influencer?
You know,
When they say that?
we don't hear that a lot, to be honest. If you look at our retail partners, we work with 4,000. Some of those are they're very specific about what's important to them. So you think about the luxury brand retailers, the multi-brand retailers, and for them, we were able to prove that our influencer base was going to consistently be on brand. So I actually can't remember many cases where a brand has come to us and said, I really don't want you to enable that influencer to talk about us.
Let's talk a little bit about the money. So how, you said RewardStyle can be a platform for people to quit their jobs and to do what they love.
Sure.
and to be an influencer. How much money can they make per post? Like what's the range?
Yeah, so everything we do is really based around ROI. So we certainly do get our influencers paid, or our brands are paying on a commission on the sales that they're driving, those influencers are driving. We also offer flat rate campaigns that we call collaborations. The interesting thing is because we have 6 years of historical performance data exclusively, we're able to say, hey brand, if you want to, if your goals are this year to grow by 50%, we can look at our influencer base, look at those marketing objectives, and then we can cast according to their needs, their marketing objectives, and be very, very successful when it comes to reaching those goals. So back to your question around influencer, like how much can they make? They can make a lot of money.
What's a lot?
A lot. I mean, we have influencers making more than $1 million a year that quit their jobs. There's a good one in the back of my head. I've received lots of letters from her, so it's top of mind, thanking us, where she was a teacher making $25,000 a year. She's barely scraping by. Had I think a three-year-old son at the time. And she was able to quit that job, make a lot of money. And if I would have, she's in the middle of kind of nowhere. I mean, it's crazy. And she was able to buy a house, save money for her college, for her child's college, and really changed her life. And that is a very common story, actually. If you look at the number of influencers on our platform that are making over $100,000 or more, that group of influencers has grown this year, if you look at the first half of the year, by 83%. So it is every new influencer that comes into our platform, because we have all that history and that playbook, they come in and they're 4 times as productive as they were when they started, say, 3 or 4 years ago. So they can make a lot of money. I can't talk about specifics.
You have said that influencers are the new sitcom.
Yeah.
Can you explain what you mean by that?
So it's interesting. I grew up with Saved by the Bell, Full House, later in life, Friends, and what influencers are doing is they have basically replaced in some ways the sitcom. So let's take Amber, my wife, as an example. When we got married, when we started RewardStyle, she was a fashion blogger. So she was talking about high luxury fashion items. Well, we then got married, so wedding became important to her. Well, her audience went through life stages with her as well, like you do with characters on a sitcom. And so there's this authentic sort of trust level, and that's why I think that they're able to really drive incredible sales. And again, it's because they're being authentic, right? They're consumers are looking to them, they admire them, they trust them, they're being honest about a lot of their life and letting them in. And so they sort of grow through these life stages with them, and so that translates very well when it comes to brands reaching marketing objectives.
Do you think that there's a point, right now, this influencer community is very hot right now, and you're obviously, going to hit 1 billion in sales or reach 1 million sales for retailers. Will there be like a peak influencer? Like, are we peak influencer? Is there going to be influencer fatigue? Do you have any insights there?
So I'll use the sitcom as sort of an analogy. So God forbid I stopped liking Game of Thrones. probably won't happen. But if I get fatigued on Game of Thrones, I can just tune out and tune into something else, another show. That is happening in a lot of ways.
So people go from one influencers to another.
There's 26 million influencers in the world. Every new social channel emerges a new type of influencer, a new format of content. And so I don't expect that that'll happen. If anything, if there's fatigue with specific influencer, there's an ability for them to find 15 more influencers that fit what's interesting to them in that life stage.
So how often do you add influencers to your community? Are you constantly adding?
Constantly. We get hundreds of thousands of applications. We don't do a lot of outbound recruiting because the top influencers in the world use our platform. They see that that's the platform to use, and so we get lots of applications. Right now we have about 17,000 influencers on the platform. At the end of the year, we'll have about 23,000. And again, those are the best in the world. We qualify all of those, but there's an incredible amount of demand to be on our platform, which is a big opportunity for brands.
And does everybody that's part of the platform always stay on the platform, or do you kick people out?
We do sometimes. Man, difficult. So sometimes we do, if our influencers are not meeting certain performance hurdles, we do ask them to leave the platform and get better and come and reapply. Okay.
I'm just, because it seems like a lot of work for you guys, like a lot to be constantly managing this large community. So is there technology involved? Like, how are you guys kind of monitoring the accounts?
No, we're definitely not an agent. We're a technology company. So all of this is done through a platform, and the only way we can grow from 17,000 to 23,000 by the end of the year is all through technology. So we've made it pretty easy to find the top influencers through our application process and get them on the platform and get them driving sales really quickly. We're very good at what we call time to active.
Okay. Another thing I wanted to ask you, you've been pretty, it's 2011 you started the company, you've been pretty under the radar, you've said deliberately so. Can you explain why that was a strategy, and I wonder if that, you recommend that strategy to others versus, launching and kind of going straight to press?
Sure. I think anytime you have, particularly a business to business, that's the core of our business. I mean, we're business to business platform for the most part. When you have something really great, you shouldn't probably go out there and tell everybody, particularly early on in the life cycle of your business. So I think it was the smart strategy. For us now, we've launched a consumer platform, and so that's a big part of why we're going out and telling our story. Another part of why we're out telling our story is that if you look at the winners and losers in retail, particularly bricks and mortars trying to move over to and mobile commerce, there's a clear common denominator, and that is those that have harnessed the influencer at scale have done a great job. So if you look at those retailers and you look at their traffic, typically it's because they've harnessed the RewardStyle channel very well.
Is that so like Nordstrom you're saying, or?
Correct. So if you look at some of those, if you think about the winners in the press, those retailers that have done extremely well, a lot of them have harnessed effectively, have really adopted the RewardStyle channel. And so we want lots of bricks and mortars to, retailers to survive. And so we're out there talking to them and making sure they understand how to utilize our platform properly.
For retailers that are more on the fence, what are the reasons?
We've gone through a cycle where I think most brands now really get it, but it's only happened in the last 6 months. So I think it's more of getting them to where they're, it takes a year or so to really drive in and adopt it. But typically hesitation is they don't know how to sort of evolve their marketing department, and so they think maybe in a very traditional sense when it comes to direct response or it's top of funnel. They think about them very disparately, right? Instead of thinking about influencer as the ability to really be full funnel for them, and so they try to put us in buckets sometimes where we're sort of cross lots of marketing disciplines within their department, and so that's been a challenge, but something that I think that's come a long way in the last year.
And I imagine as they see things like Nordstrom and Sephora and these other companies seeing a lot of success, they then feel more comfortable.
Absolutely.
What's next for you guys after this year?
So in March, we launched the LikeToKnow.it consumer app. What you don't know is we spent several years and through acquisition also acquired IP and technology. There was a lot of effort going into that launch, but there's a heavy roadmap behind that. So very excited to roll that out, to really execute our vision there. Global expansion is a big part of what we're doing. We have influencers in 85 countries, helping brands expand internationally and leverage the scale that we offer. So more to come. I hope that Mike, hopefully I didn't piss Mike off, and hopefully he'll invite me back next year, and I can talk about all the exciting things that have happened, because there's a lot to come. So excited about that.
Awesome, cool. Well, we're out of time, so thank you guys. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah.